can't believe we forgot that. How's it going, everybody? Hope you're doing well. My name is Andrew, and welcome back to another video. I gotta stop leaning away from my microphone. This is the first episodes of the Odds and Ends show. This is a show dedicated to tips and tricks and little tidbits about the business of music and music gear. Me and Hayden, who's on Zoom with me right now, we were actually having a conversation about stuff, and we recorded great audio, and I totally forgot to hit record on video for Zoom. Um, so welcome back, Hayden. Welcome
Hey
back
Andrew, how's it
to the
going?
call. Doing good. We're gonna try and recreate this as best as possible.
It's gonna be
Um,
great.
yeah, it will be great.
Yeah.
So today's video is dedicated to the 5 connections that every musician needs in their gear bag. And these are 5 connections that everyone tends to forget every now and again. And I was sharing earlier that like I showed up to a gig one time where I was asked to bring 1/4 inch cables. And so I show up to the gig. I'm early. I'm like, this is when I first started gigging. And I got my drums and I'm like, oh, peppy 18-year-old Andrew walking into this gig. And I pull out my 1/4 inch cables. I'm like, yeah, here they are. And they go, no, Andrew, those are patch cables. We needed speaker cables. And I didn't know the difference at the time. And so I was just like, it's 1/4 inch. And I ruined a gig because we couldn't hook up our sound equipment, which
I think
wasn't
that shows the importance of being specific too.
Yes, there definitely was like a communication breakdown in that. If they said we needed speaker cables, I could have gone to my music store and asked what the heck is the difference and would have been told. So that's what this video is. So you don't have to go into the music store. You can just watch this video or listen to this audio and just make sure that you got it under your belt. So these are 5 connections that everybody needs in their bag, I would say. And the first and probably most important one would be XLR.
Yeah, I would say XLRs are important. Every musician should have at least one
Yeah.
XLR cable.
Mhm.
Vocalists is a given because XLRs plug into your mic. Most mics, unless it's a USB, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, any instrument that needs to go into a DI, so keys, bass, you need an XLR to go from the DI to the mixer. Drummers need it for drumming, making a kick drum or anything like that, but also
Yeah.
to record, plugging into an interface. It just
Yeah, totally.
it's
Like
clearer signal.
there are so many useful applications for XLR, especially in even like there's a couple of lighting companies out there that are allow their lights to be daisy chained by XLR cables. So it works out so well to be able to have those cables on hand. If you come across those types of lights, as a drummer, I always carry 2 XLR cables with me, and 2 microphones, one to mic an overhead and one to mic my kick. So we just get a nice image of the kit as we're gigging, whether it's in a bar or whether it's in like an actual venue, like RIP Rivoli in Toronto. What a
Ugh.
fantastic venue, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. That
yeah.
place was amazing. I have so many memories there, but I
Hmm.
also know that they were planning on closing down before the
Oh, okay.
lockdown.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I heard that they closed like due to the whole pandemic we're in. Um, and that was like one of my favorite things about the Riv is that there were the audio there was just always fantastic. That like I think it's Serge was the guy's name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he knew what he was doing. When he mic'd up my kit, I was like, "Oh, damn, okay." And because we were sharing the bill with a couple of other bands, and when I heard my kit being played by other guys, like from the or audience perspective, I was like, "Oh, my drums sound good." Yeah.
It's funny that you say that though, because there's a few places down Toronto. We're getting off topic, but there's a few
No.
places in Toronto that they have a collective of sound guys, and they'll hop from venue to venue. So there's a few
Mm.
other venues that still have that sound.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
totally.
I know Horseshoe used to get a bunch of the guys from the Rivoli.
Hmm.
The Piston is another place that they get. They're all connected.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah,
Cool. So back on topic, XLR.
yeah.
Yeah, one of the most common connections. He's mostly with microphones and definitely some high-end keyboards. My T3, I just stopped recording, so we're going with Zoom. It looks like.
Okay, cool.
Um, Also some high-end keyboards, which is really nice. The main thing that a lot of people like, or not like the XLR, like it's such a new connection, but it's definitely needed, like you said, to connect into interfaces. You can send phantom power through it. Definitely something that we want to have in our bags at all times, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, and the fact that you're able to connect it and make it either stereo or mono is a
Mhm.
huge thing. It can carry both stereo and mono signals because it's
Yeah,
balanced. Yeah,
definitely. And like that's the great thing about the XLR is, like, especially in recording, like recording vocals in mono and then panning them left and right, like later on in
yeah,
post to get it to get, if give you a doubled effect, whatever it looks like, is a great connection to have.
yeah,
So let's jump into the connection that you know the most about, which is the quarter inch cable.
yeah, man.
I mean,
Quarter inch.
like, yeah, I mean, being a bass player, that's like your bread and butter of a connection.
Yeah,
Um, and you can actually use both as part of your instrument, because you can use it as your actual patch, as a
hmm
mono cable, or as a speaker cable to connect a head and a cab.
yeah. That's funny that you say that though, because for me, I prefer speak-on cables, which
Mm,
we won't be covering in this video because it's not a super common connection.
right, right.
Um, just because I find it is a better signal. And that's the thing with patch cables is if you cheap out on a patch cable, it's going to sound like you cheaped out on a patch cable. You usually typically want to go for more expensive ones because it does deliver clearer signal.
Yeah,
Um,
and like that's the thing that I hear a lot now as well, is inside, um like I've seen patch cables that are, 10 bucks, 20 bucks. There were some music stores even that sell like bulk cables, like for like 10 bucks for a 20-foot cable.
yeah,
But then you see like the deluxe and like the studio patch cables, which is like, I hear they're supposed to offer better shielding. Like what is that inside of like an audio? Can you actually tell? I can't tell a difference because I'm not in that world. I don't
not
actually know.
like typically you can't, the common ear won't be able to tell the difference. I know I can't tell the difference unless it's like a $10 cable compared to like a $150 cable. It just sounds cleaner. There's something about it that sounds cleaner, but
Right.
it has to do with the shielding inside. That's taking away a bunch of the ground noise.
Hmm.
And that's the biggest thing about it is it takes away the ground noise, all that hum, or whenever you get radio frequencies coming through your amp at a practice, you're just like, oh, everybody's laughing, and then it gets annoying after like 10 minutes. You're like,
You
oh,
hear
shut
the
that.
news 1010 talk show
Yeah, exactly. The FM,
broadcasting from Toronto.
the AM channels or whatever.
Oh my God, 680 coming through with that
Yeah.
weird high pitched hum.
Oh my gosh.
Well, because they're an AM broadcast, they broadcast in mono, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I remember the first time I discovered more expensive patch cables. I was in school. I was at a rehearsal for something,
Hmm.
and the teacher who was supervising the rehearsal, he's a amazing guitar player, um, and he looks at me and he's like, "Show me your patch cable," and I pull out this like $20 patch cable.
Yeah,
He just kind of looks at me. He's like, "Get something better," and I was just like,
yeah.
"Oh, okay, yeah, sure." And
Your
it,
patch cable sucks, and this is why you suck.
yeah, exactly.
You hear that? Get a better patch cable. You're gonna sound better.
You're
That's
gonna get the magic of the cable.
exactly. So, I mean, speaking of, but we've been talking a lot about patch cables, but let's talk the difference, because a lot of people don't know this. But let's talk about the difference between mono and stereo. Specifically, when you come across a patch cable, you're going to see either one ring around the actual jack, or you're going to see two rings. So when you see one, this is what's called a TS cable. This stands for tip sleeve. And then if you see two rings around the jack, you get tip ring sleeve, which both carry, while they are the same connection, they'll fit in the same type of female jack. They carry two very different signals. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that.
Yeah. The biggest thing I think is if you mix them up, you put a TRS cable into a mono input, you're only going to get one side of the sound. So it's going to sound weird. A lot of people think it's probably a cable problem, which it is, but they think the cable's broken or the input's broken, and then they'll have to go get an expensive repair done. It's just the matter of what you're plugging it into and what
Yeah,
cable you're using.
just be aware of the signal that you're using, right? So
Yeah.
and I think that that's the major thing, is that a lot of people I've seen, I'm guilty of this too, where I've bought like a dual quarter inch to sum out into 1/4 inch, but I bought it as a mono end, and then plugged it in and going, why isn't it working? Why am I not getting a stereo image?
Right. Yeah, exactly. But you can still do stuff with mono and make it sound really good,
Mhm.
in terms of that. And all guitars and bass, stringed instruments, they're mono. Anything, I'm pretty sure electronic drums are mono too. You would know that.
They can, yeah. So like my TD50 has a stereo out, like left right stereo out, but the left is also the mono side. So you can
Right.
just get a patch cable and go straight out to an amp or whatever. Um Specifically, I like, ironically enough, the TD50 also has XLR out for the master. So I actually like going that way
Yeah,
because cleaner signal and a more direct approach to it. I just got to carry the same two cables in my bag.
for sure.
Yeah.
I think
And
a big confusion is keyboard outs, especially when it's a 1/4 inch.
yeah,
Because
and like when you start getting into the stage pianos, like the Nord Stage or like the RD 2000 from Roland, like a lot of people get really confused on where does it go. First off, most of the time, you got to remember, most of the time that when you find a left right 1/4 inch, the left side will usually be L/mono.
yeah,
That's how you're going to be able to tell that that can take a patch cable. If
yeah,
it just says left right and it doesn't say mono, no.
yeah. I would, even just to be safe, I would just plug a dual 1/4 inch, which is just 2/4 inches, one's red, yellow, or white, and then you just plug those in, and it goes into a TRS cable,
Yeah.
and you make sure you plug a TRS into the input.
One thing I will mention, when we talked about the dual 1/4 inch to sum out a signal, the colors don't matter. Sometimes they're going to be red and yellow, sometimes they're going to be red and white,
Mhm.
but don't get confused with the colors. Just make sure that it's 1/4 inch mono and mono that go out to a stereo signal.
And
It
red
will
is
work.
always right. Red is always right.
Yeah, and there's, okay, so they scratch that. They do matter for a certain reason,
Yeah.
and strictly the red, the yellow/white doesn't, it doesn't matter
I
as
think
long as.
people get it confused because when they're plugging stuff into their TVs or home theater systems, it's
Well,
red, yellow, white.
that gets into that gets into the RCA connector,
Yes.
because a lot of people in RCA start to look at red goes to red, yellow goes to yellow, and sometimes there's like white, and on HD there's like blue,
Blue and
green, and
green.
like purple and stuff like that. In audio, when you're setting up an audio system, yes, red matters because it's always your right signal, but the other color doesn't matter in audio. In video, yes, it matters greatly, but not in terms of the audio that we're setting up.
Yeah.
And one more quick point on the mono versus stereo. We also, there are 1/4 inch speaker cables.
Yes.
Whatever you do, do not plug a speaker cable into an amp. Like, don't try to plug your guitar into your amplifier with a speaker cable.
First of all, it just looks wrong.
That too, you get this flat little,
Yeah, you get the dual wires
yeah,
glued
exactly, the dual
together.
channel.
Yeah, you don't want
Um,
that.
but also, like, if you do that, like, speaker cables are designed to carry a current because they're designed to go into power amps to passive monitors. So if you plug that into your amplifier, you risk some serious damage happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just keep that in mind as well. Like going from 1/4 inch is great, and we also we talk about the 1/4 inch to sum out a channel. It looks, actually, I have it right here, it looks like that.
Hey.
um as just a little adapter that goes to 3.5, which I'm just trying to make up segues into the next connection. So 3.5 gets really common, which is also known as 1/8 inch, or in the, I'll say, more consumer world, also known as an aux cable. A lot of people don't know. It was funny. I was talking to a friend of mine where he said, "Oh yeah, just bring an aux." I'm like, "Cool, 3.5, got it." And he goes, "What's that?" And I go, "Oh, aux." And he goes, yeah, aux cable. And I go, yeah, auxiliary. That's the, oh my God. He started freaking out because he realized what it actually stood for.
Yeah.
But 3.5, yeah, most commonly used on like headphones, earbuds, stuff like that.
Phones.
Um, Phones especially, and
Well,
that's where
not
we,
so much anymore, but
well, at the time when headphone jacks were still a thing on phones,
yeah.
before it turned into the dongles. I don't have a dongle lying around here.
Yeah.
But before it even turned into that, yeah, headphones were a great thing in phones. And you would have noticed two different ends on even even 1/8 inch. There was TRS. And now, especially with the advent of Rode and other companies coming out, by the way, Rode PodMic, this is fantastic. Review might be coming soon. Just saying. Um,
Sponsor me.
Hashtag sponsor us. Um, you'll find TRRS. Now we had mentioned tip ring sleeve, which is going to carry your stereo signal. There is also tip ring sleeve, which is actually going to be really useful for headphones that have a microphone inside of them as well. And what's great about that is you can convert now mic signals into regular stereo to record direct audio onto your phone, and it's fantastic.
Can I just make a point? And I don't want to like point anybody out because nobody's being pointed out in this, but please do not record professional audio through headphone mics.
You know how many times I've been on a Zoom call over like the last year, and the stark difference in audio is like, I mean, I understand that not everybody has the means to have the types of setups that we have, especially as working in an audio industry, but man, like USB mics go a long way.
Oh
Like
yeah.
there are microphones out there. One being the AT2020 USB-I from
Yep.
Audio Technica
It's
that
great.
you can plug directly into your phone. If you're not on the go, I get it. If you're on the go and you need to be on a call, that headphone mic works perfectly fine. But for those who are trying to do like educational content, I've seen it before, and you have these earbuds sticking out and people are trying to talk into
Yeah,
the
it just
microphone like this.
so
it
unprofessional.
it doesn't sound good.
And it doesn't sound good. You can get vocal mics for like $58 and it'll sound 110% better.
Yeah, like, you know what, well, I'll put a few links in the description for some products that you can get. You can literally spend less than $200 Canadian, mind you. But you can literally spend less than $200 and get a decent like vocal setup for your mic, or
Yeah,
for your phone. Oh my God.
for your phone. And you know what? Using your mic to record like a demo or an idea onto your phone and then use it for later, I understand that completely.
Yeah, that's
You're
that's fine too.
you
That's
don't want to
the
forget the idea, so you want to make sure you have a mic and it's on your headphones. That's great. It's a great use for it. And great for talking on the phone. But to actually like professionally record or do something in a professional setting with those is, for me, it's I just kind of have to face palm sometimes.
Yeah, I totally get it. And like I want to make it clear is we're not trying to bash anyone that has these types of setups. We're not saying that you can't do what you're doing. It works awesome. And there are other methods to get the job done at like that'll take everything to another level, which is
Yeah,
what we're really pointing at.
yeah.
Cool. So with that, mics that plug into your phone and plug into your computer and whatnot, we are at USB. So
Already?
far, like just to recap, we have XLR, we have 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, and USB is going to be a huge connection, especially in this day and age of, you know, pandemic. We're all stuck at home. USB is a huge connection for a lot of pieces of gear. So Hayden, what are some types of gears? What are some products, some pieces of gear that
Yeah.
can use the USB connection?
Yeah, I first of all, I'm going to say the exponential evolution of a USB cable is crazy.
Huge.
They probably um started getting really popular maybe around like 10, 15 years ago maybe. Um
Well, like I think the main thing is like everybody knows the USB like type A, like your classic thumb drive
yeah,
USB port. That's type A. Um And then there's like type B, which is like your classic printer cable.
Hmm.
And then now there's USB, what's called type C,
Hmm.
which is the standard connection on a lot of things right now. Like the new iPad has it. I think the new iPhone 12 has it as well.
Oh yeah,
um
yeah,
I
yeah.
think
They
it's a
do. Yeah,
USB-C connection now, and like
yeah,
very quickly that's going to become the standard.
yeah.
um Especially with a company as
Big
huge
as
as
Apple.
Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But going back to your question, I mean, the first thing that I think of when thinking of USB for a musician is audio interface.
Hmm.
That's the biggest one to record yourself. Another one would be like a MIDI keyboard. You don't need MIDI in and out anymore. You don't need to buy two separate cables to plug into an
Yeah, and
interface. You
and
just
that
have to
was a
go
huge
USB.
thing, like especially even like 15-20 years ago now, like, and we're talking like not too long ago, like early 2000s. Like it was, you had to know a lot about MIDI.
Yeah.
You had to buy these cables. They were 5 pin. They almost look like a little smiley face.
Yeah.
um but you had to know about these cables. You had to know what the sensitivity of the MIDI you were sending through. Like you had to know about MIDI. Like it was a profession to know about MIDI. And now USB type A to USB type B, plug them into your computer and it just sends information.
It's done. Yeah. And that's what it is. It's data transference. It's all it is. It's taking an analog signal and turning it into a digital one. And
Yeah.
we, just to clarify, we're saying MIDI, MIDI, not mini, MINI.
That's
There's
a
a difference.
common, especially when you say it really quickly. I've heard people asking for MIDI cables. Like whenever I'm in a music store and I'll hear like a customer beside me going like, "Hey, can I get a mini cable?" And then some people will come back with a literal 3.5 cable, and then I've seen the customer freak out on the employee because they didn't understand. So be sure to enunciate MIDI versus MINI. MIDI, it stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface.
Yes.
Um, and it does wonders for information.
And make sure that if you're using a USB, specify USB. Don't specify MIDI because some people get that confused too.
Yeah, because there are actual MIDI cables, and then there are USB cables that send MIDI information.
Yes.
So like that's a huge one as well.
Yeah.
The main thing that, like Hayden is saying, is it's a digital transfer connection. So it's like USB cables only send digital information. So
Just data.
there's not anything out there that can take, I know Hayden said it earlier, taking an analog signal. As much as it's analog, we're pushing on something on the equipment. It is not an analog signal that's going through the cable. It's all digital information. It's a
It's all
bunch
ones
of
and
ones and
zeros.
zeros.
Yeah.
Oh wow, we said that at the same time. Okay,
Yeah. No.
awesome.
Yeah, and with USB, even for photos, for any
Hmm.
creative storage or storage in general, documents or anything, it's just data. They're
Yeah.
just transferring data onto your computer. I'm thinking of like a spy movie or like some sort of heist movie when they have to get that like chip.
We Yeah, but
You need,
they always call it something weird, like they call it like the hyperdrive or
yeah,
something odd, because like for some reason, I mean, I can imagine if like Tom Cruise is in Mission Impossible, goes down, like gets all like hanging from the ceiling. Guys, I've got the USB drive.
yeah. That sounds lit.
And like everyone at Mission Control would be like, "What? We risked our lives for a USB? No,
Yeah, it's like
you need to risk it for the hyperdrive, man. That's what it's for."
there's a huge truck exploding in the background, and you just zoom in on Tom Cruise's face, and he's just like, "I got the USB." That's not that's
That's
not
not
epic,
nearly as dun dun dun. Oh, I used a demonetized. Used a copyrighted piece of music.
but you didn't
I
because you
sang
didn't
it.
finish it.
I sang it.
I
It,
didn't
it was
understand.
more than 2 seconds. I sang it. Oh God, this is getting off track. Okay, moving on. So we've talked about XLR, USB, quarter inch, both mono and stereo, and eighth inch, both mono and stereo, and TRRS. Even the last connection out there is also the oldest connection, which is RCA.
Yeah,
It is the still most commonly used connection out there. You can find it on, it's on almost any piece of tech. You can find it on interfaces, studio monitors, TVs, I mean, TVs specifically are slowly losing it in favor of like optical, but they're still
HDMI.
around
Yeah.
or HDMI.
Yeah.
But they're still around.
Yeah.
It's a really old, not really old. I don't actually know the exact age of RCA, but it's been around for as long as I can remember.
Do you
I
know what
mean,
it stands for?
even old tube TVs had it. Let's look it up. What does RCA stand
It's
for?
radio. I should know this. RCA.
I'm just gonna look it up.
Yeah, me too. It does have a meaning. No, it's not root cause analysis.
No, RCA
Radio
stand.
Corporation of America, and it was designed in the 1940s, and it's still being
Okay,
used. Yeah,
so that gives you an idea of how old this damn connection is.
80 years
Because
old.
yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So typically in audio, because we are a music channel, in audio you will see RCA in two variations. You're going to see it as red and yellow, or you will see it as red and white. Much like the same thing with the quarter inch, red, yellow, red, white. Red, like Hayden said, always the right, and then white or yellow, it doesn't matter. Sometimes I've seen people look at mixers, especially when I'm on a gig, if they're new to audio as well. They'll look at a mixer and they'll plug red in, then they kind of get confused when yellow doesn't go to white.
Mm,
And
yeah.
and it really doesn't matter in that regard. Like I was saying earlier, it came from a video standpoint where you needed to make sure you plugged everything in properly, otherwise your TV and audio just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Especially as home theater became a lot more popular and things like that. I mean, now we've got Bluetooth sound bars that can connect to our TV, and we're like great audio literally with the push of a button.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's
like
wireless too.
Exactly. So like you very rarely when you buy those sound bars and things like that, like Sonos has one. I think Sennheiser came out with one as well, which is like I have a buddy who actually our mutual friend Josh, he heard it
Mm,
when he got invited out to Sennheiser, and like he said it was fantastic.
yeah.
Um
Can
yeah,
imagine.
so RCA definitely the oldest, still used with a lot of interfaces, home theater equipment,
Mhm.
and even DJ equipment.
Yep.
A lot of those guys, especially on their mixers, they use RCA a lot. The one thing I want to mention is that RCA is not to be confused with SPDIF.
Yes. Or
Yeah,
mini. I've seen people trying to plug
no,
minis into an RCA input
seriously,
or an RCA into a mini input. Yeah, I've seen it.
no, no, oh my
I've
god.
seen it.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's like I heard someone tell me about a time because I have a few friends who work at a local music store around here, and I had a few friends tell me like that they've gotten calls where people have tried to, because it looks very similar. I get it, but it doesn't work. People have tried to plug XLR cables into their wall outlets, and they think that the mic would just work that way. I'm not even kidding you. If I can reach out to a friend of ours, like I'll let's see if we can have them come on and get and get them to
Yeah.
tell that story, because that was hilarious.
Yeah. I would really like to see the end result of that.
Oh my god, no! Like the person could lose their hand. Like
Yeah.
that's gonna be such. Oh my god, no! I'm not even gonna. I don't even want to think of what could happen with that. RCA is the oldest connection.
Yes.
Bottom line. So just to recap, like XLR microphones interfaces, like always carry these cables with you. XLR quarter inch, both mono and stereo, but know the difference. Especially, I mean, Hayden can attest, if you're a string player, guitar, bass, even having those speaker cables with you. Um, Especially for like people who are like, oh, gear's going to be backlined, and you don't know unless you know what the gear is exactly,
Yeah.
having these cables with you is just going to make your life so much easier.
Yeah. I feel as though like just the speaker cable is kind of going a little obsolete now just because of powered PA systems and now with guitar modeling. So there's no
Like,
need for amps or speakers.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially like combos are getting way better. Like you look at like the Boss Katana stuff, and like
Yeah.
those solid state amps are incredible.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and like so we had XLR quarter inch, eighth inch, USB, and finally RCA. Some honorable mentions. Shout out to Anaya, our writer, who put a lot of these points together. Thank you, Anaya.
Thanks, Anaya.
The honorable mentions go out to ADAT. You know, that's a huge connection, especially now in home theater. Optical is a huge thing that can connect theater systems with one cable.
Yeah.
Like, it's awesome the amount of information that this thing can handle. Banana plugs, I don't see them being used too often anymore. I'm just reading what he gave me.
Okay.
I don't see them being used too often anymore. They were very useful at a time.
Yeah.
And like you can still buy them as like separate ends if you know what you're doing in soldering cables together. You can actually do that. Um, and then of course, as we were talking about before, 5-pin MIDI. Um,
Yep.
they're still around. They can still be used, although they're not as common with USB making the advancements that they've used in technology. Oh, and I had actually highlighted something in the USB section here, which I just noticed. USB to XLR or quarter inch does not exist.
Dude,
It's
apparently it does.
well, and
If you go on Amazon,
here's the thing. He actually said it in the notes. He said, "Please mention USB to XLR or quarter inch do not exist. If they do, there's a converter, like an audio digital, like a DAC or an ADC inside the cable. It's a custom thing. I know companies like what's the company here? Is it a Canadian company? BRTB, the custom company.
I'm not entirely sure.
I know I've heard of this
Oh,
company.
yes, 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 it
Are
is
they Canadian?
BRTB.
BRTB. I'm looking it up.
That's fine. We also
Yeah,
forgot like the most common cable of all for
BRTB is
anybody.
Canadian, just in case
Oh,
anybody's
sick.
wondering. But they do custom cables, so you can actually, if you want something that's like doesn't exist, hit them up and like let them know. They'll make it for you. It's pretty incredible.
That's awesome. We forgot to talk about power cables.
You know what? Yeah, that's I. Part of me just feels like that was a given.
That is a given.
Like, power cables are just necessary for any piece of tech. I can't think of a single piece of gear, music related or otherwise, that doesn't come with a power cable.
Yeah.
Like it's always in the box. And as an, I'm sure you're the same way as an audio, like as an engineer myself, and as a studio recording artist. I'm not like a famous recorder, but I'm an artist and I record. I'm a recording artist.
Yes.
I have tons and tons of power cables lying around here.
Yeah.
So like I don't really worry about it too much. If something, like if I buy a piece of gear and like I've had employees go, "Oh, it doesn't come with a power cable. Do you want to get one?" I'm like, "Dude, I got tons. I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't need power
I'm
cables."
I'm pretty relentless with my power cables too. Like if it's like a little bent out of shape, I'll check it out because like I know I'll have another one in like a
Yeah,
week.
totally. Like I think in general, power cables are just like the one cable you can beat the absolute crap out of, and it'll pretty much still work until unless it's like totally frayed or broken in half.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that you want to make sure with these cables as well. A huge tip for anything cable wise: please, 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 please learn how to wrap your cables properly.
Should we
I
do a demonstration?
Oh my god, I don't think I have a spare cable lying around right now.
I mean, I do, but I don't feel like standing up and showing how to wrap a cable.
Me neither. Like all my cables are actually in use, so I can't really do that right now. Um, but I've seen people, for those of you who are actually watching on video, I've actually seen people start to wrap their cables like around their elbow. It's faster, yes, and
Mhm.
especially when you have dozens of cables to wrap, but
Mhm.
they will not last long
No. I
at
mean, I
all.
do it all the time. I do it that way all the time, but it's literally just for the speed of it.
Mhm.
It's not efficient at all because the it's gonna get tangled anyways.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not nearly gigging as much as I was before all this happened. Like 2020, shout out nightmare year. But like I like whenever I would gig, especially like my late gigs, like that ended at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It was literally doing that to throw them in the bag, and then I would unwrap them when I got home the next morning and wrap them properly.
Yeah.
Um, because like I want to make sure that I take care of my cables. And after this conversation, I think I might buy more expensive cables in general because
Yeah.
I did cheap out on a lot of my cables.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that you would do it faster so you get home. I'm always down for the hang after a gig. I'm always down for the hang, talking to people. While I'm talking to people, I'll just wrap my cables properly, make sure it may look as though I'm not listening. I'm listening to you, but I'm just making sure my cables wrapped proper
Yeah.
because I don't have to spend another $50 on a cable.
Yeah, I mean, being a drummer, I always show up early to the gig anyways. So my hang is before and setting my kit up and setting up I set up a lot of the sound equipment some of the times actually.
Yeah.
Or helping everybody else load in. Like that's where my hang is, so I don't mind it as much.
Yeah.
And I just like sleep. I like
Oh,
sleeping, so I usually, especially if a gig ends at like midnight, I'm cool to hang out for like an hour. But if it ends
yeah.
at like 2-3 a.m., I'm booking it out of there as fast as possible.
If I don't have to work the next day, I'm hanging. I'm hanging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those watching on video, that's why I'm like all dressed up. I got to go to work after this. So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
cool. So that's pretty much it. 5 cable connections you need: XLR, 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, both stereo and mono in each case, USB, and finally RCA. You know, like I said, honorable mentions, honorable mentions. I sped through that so fast. Honorable mentions: ADAT, banana plug, 5-pin MIDI, and who knows, maybe we'll come back and we'll visit some of the more non-common cables, but are still very useful.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can
And
do more videos of just like odds and ends. How to
yeah,
we started
totally.
kind of going into it like we're talking about the gig, how to prepare for a gig, or the
Yeah,
common gig etiquette.
yeah, and then it like this whole conversation just turned into like, you know, everybody needs like, what do you need to prepare a gig? Everybody needs XLR, everybody needs this, and we were like, wait, there's a whole new topic here. Let's just talk about cables.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know about anybody else who's listening to this or watching this. I love talking about gear, which is why we started this channel.
Yeah.
But like to spend an hour just talking about cables, I still had a blast.
It was great. It may be boring for some people because we're just like, oh yeah, cable. It's important.
Exactly.
It's
I
important.
mean, there were some gig stories going on as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Hope you learned something great here, Hayden. As always, it's a pleasure hanging out with you.
Thanks for having me.
And
It's
I
always
can't
great.
wait till lockdown's over so we can do this all in person.
I know. Just do like a
Yeah.
round table type thing.
Exactly. Get Kevin in. They saw Kevin in the last video, so they know who he is. We got to get Denise and Nayat on camera eventually.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. You might not want me on camera.
Well, you're already
late.
on camera,
It's
so it
too
doesn't
late.
matter. It's too late.
It's too late.
All right, guys. Thanks for
All right.
listening. We'll take it easy.
See you guys.